It's 5:32. We got 51 people on the meeting, and I think we should begin. So first of all, welcome to TLI's first Zoom, and hopefully Zoom annual meeting, and hopefully is the last, and that we will get back to the Grange and are back home to the Grange next year. I think there's a little bit of light in the tunnel, and it would be great to be doing this in person, because I think that that's a major piece of what the annual meeting has always been about. We have quite a crowd that signed in here tonight. I didn't think we'd get over 50, but we're at 55 right now. And we've been working hard to organize a thorough and well-run meeting with as much participation as possible. Now, that's not going to be simple in Zoom, but we're going to try to do it. Before giving a brief overview on TLI and Meatworks, I would like Elizabeth Friery, our clerk, to explain how the Zoom functions for the meeting will work. Elizabeth?
Hi, Andy and everyone. Thank you. I'd like to just give you a brief summary of how the voting. Oh, hold on. Wait 1 second. Sorry about that. I'd like to just give you a brief summary of how the mechanics of this meeting are going to work on the Zoom platform. So during the first portion of the meeting, you will be hearing from the speakers highlighted on the agenda. Please note that while the speakers are talking, your mics and chat functions will be muted to reduce distraction. We want to be sure to hear from the voices of the members on the floor, so we have allotted 3 opportunities for members' feedback. 2 will be open discussions, and 1 will be an opportunity to cast a vote. During the discussion periods of the meeting, we will be asking for comments and questions from the floor. When we begin the discussion portions, please alert us to your question or comment by using the raise hand feature. We'll do our best to answer questions in the order that they are raised. You will also have an opportunity to nominate and cast a vote for candidates for the member-elected board seats. When we get to the business section of the meeting, I'll return with more details on how the voting will take place. Andy, we can give it back to you, and then I'll return with those details later.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. As you might all recall, in late February 2020, the TLI board unanimously moved forward with a major management restructuring at Meatworks. Performance was lagging, and we needed to cut overhead costs. Then, 3 weeks later, COVID hit all of us, and demand for local food and the need for local processing exploded overnight. As you will hear this evening, we have made substantial progress at Meatworks, and just as important, our educational work continues to expand. The mission and the vision that we all shared 4 or 5 years ago is becoming a reality. Yes, there are challenges and problems every day and every week. We need to continue to improve our services to all our stakeholders, our members, and our customers. However, through the hard work, commitment, and focus of our team at Meatworks and TLI, as well as the entire board, we are having a major positive impact on our region. I want to thank you all for attending tonight and ask for your continued support as we move forward with TLI. There are a few highlights of the past year that I would like to mention before turning over the speaker position. On the operations side at Meatworks, the management team of Barry Gross, Justin Sandville, and Sue Motha have done an amazing job on several different fronts. First and foremost, they have kept the plant safe and operational throughout the worst of COVID. We slowed down from forced COVID absences and injuries, but we never closed down. Secondly, Barry, Justin, and Sue have built strong teams throughout the plant, creating the efficiencies necessary to significantly increase production. Thirdly, they have worked hard throughout the plant to achieve high marks from our USDA inspectors. This objective was a key component of our goal with Meatworks. There are and always will be issues that surface, but the management team's ability to work through and resolve problems is impressive. Barry is going to dive into more detail on the operations side in a few minutes. From a financial perspective, TLI and Meatworks was successful in generating financial support early in 2020 from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, regional foundations, a forgivable PP loan, and private donations that enabled us to build production levels and efficiencies through the fall and to reach a near break-even position by the end of 2020. To achieve this level of performance, we have not committed capacity to the large livestock aggregators, as we had seriously contemplated and started negotiating for in early 2020. But we have depended solely on the demand from the local producers and will continue to do so. John Previent, our treasurer, will provide more detail on our financial performance. Finally, despite COVID, our educational work at TLI, executed by our program director, Sarah Cogswell, and our grazing consultant, Samantha Glaze Corcoran, kept building throughout the region. 2021 looks to be a very active year for our educational work. Sarah will provide an overview of their work later in the meeting, but I would first like to turn the meeting over to Barry Gross to provide more detail on the operations at Meatworks. Barry?
Hello, everyone. Try to navigate the Zoom here. So TLI and Meatworks came about because there was a shortage of quality local meat processing in the region. And since opening in late 2018, Meatworks has become an important part of the local food system. I became plant manager just over a year ago, as Andy mentioned, around the time that the COVID pandemic took hold. As the vulnerabilities of the large centralized meat systems led to shortages at grocery stores, people turned to local meat in a historic shift that led to a clamoring for bookings in the few USDA inspected slaughterhouses in the region, and Meatworks was no exception. In response to a surge in this demand, I made facility improvements. I bought extra bandsaws, hoists, and packaging machines, and did equipment maintenance that protected us from production slowdowns. I hired new staff, cross-trained them, and implemented next man up practices to keep the process moving along. I created new ways of analyzing our tracking data, giving us better understanding of our operational efficiency and progress. We improved communications with producers. We refined our procedures for receiving, harvesting, processing, fresh and smoked value-added further processing, and shipping, so that, as Treasurer John Previent will detail, our year-over-year volume has increased significantly from a low of 30,000 pounds of finished product in a month in 2019 to as much as 80,000 pounds this year. After only 2 years open, we are already looking at ways to expand the facility, years ahead of schedule. This past summer, we realized that we needed more cold storage, so we created a new loading dock and installed a freezer trailer, which allowed us to handle the extra volume. While the wholesale outlets we had been exploring became less viable as the pandemic took hold, sales in the Meatworks retail store experienced rapid growth as consumers' renewed focus on local sourcing demonstrated the strength of a local, sustainable food system in real time. One Saturday morning in March, I arrived at Meatworks to open the retail store, and there was a line around the corner waiting to buy meat. Throughout the past year, thanks to our adherence to safety and sanitation, Meatworks has not had a single case of COVID-19 amongst our staff. We have had to respond to precautionary absences, staff injuries, and turnover. And despite the challenges, Meatworks was able to continue operating uninterrupted. And I am proud to report that we did not have to cancel a single producer's appointment. As staff numbers and experience grew, volume and efficiency followed suit. We learned from our mistakes, reduced overly long hang times, refined communication of and adherence to cutting instructions, and continued to improve harvest procedures, packaging integrity, continuity of operational supplies, and enhanced finished product handling. Establishment M46351 is proud of the healthy working relationship it has with USDA Food Safety Inspection Service personnel. Focused management of the facility, processes, staff, and food safety systems have led to better than standard testing results. 34 samples tested for Salmonella, E. coli 0157H7, and other Shiga toxin producing E. coli strains in the past 12 months, 0 have returned positive. We continue to service producers from throughout the region, from all across Massachusetts, including the Cape and the Islands, Rhode Island and Connecticut, and several from Long Island, New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. To date, we have provided quality processing for over 500 individual farms, including helping those who had to shift from USDA inspected processing at Blood Farm in Groton, Mass, after their slaughter and grant of inspection was suspended. Bookings at Meatworks continue to look strong well into the future, as available dates for 2022 are just about filled up. As efficiencies in the facility improved over the past year, we increased the volume of production. And as staff and systems continue to evolve, we will grow to meet the demand. I have enormous admiration and gratitude for the team that works very hard at Meatworks every day, as well as for the incredibly dedicated and brilliant members of TLI's board of directors that has expertly guided our organization through all the challenges we have yet encountered.
John?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Andy and Elizabeth. Barry's going to put some slides up on the screen here in a few minutes that we can talk about later. There's some basic financial information. But let me give you a little background about what's been going on. We have our financial reports for the previous 3 years, I think, up through 2019, finally have gone through audit by our CPA, and those can be made available. They were finished, I would say, about 3 weeks ago. So we have those audited and ready. 2020 has closed, but because we have changed bookkeepers, we don't really have an audited report for 2020. So the numbers I'll show you are preliminary, but I think they're going to be accurate for our purposes. We did change bookkeepers, and that's been a very positive for us. Somebody who I think can fulfill the role of both accountant and possibly business manager. But it's taken her some time, of course, to get used to everything that we're doing. But we're very optimistic about that. I would remind everybody that this is only our second complete year running this business, which means we're still pretty much in startup phase. And we've gone through some growing pains. But I think when we look at the slides and talk about them a bit, I think you'll sense the optimism that we have as well. So Barry, if you want to see if you can get a slide up on the screen, and I'll make some comments about it. Hopefully this will work.
Okay, give me a moment here.
Sure. I should say that, by the way, anytime anybody has any financial questions, they shouldn't hesitate to call me or go ahead and email me. Let's start, Barry, with not that one. Yes, all right. What you see in front of you is two lines and some trend lines. The two lines represent in black the profit and loss from operations per pound of meat that we've processed. Now, these are not precise in the sense that sometimes we do kill only for animals, and so their pounds don't show up in the processed pounds, but that's a fairly small percentage of what we do. So these numbers are more than 95% accurate, but I would say they're not 100% pinpoint. But what you need to see here, let's start at the bottom, the black line. That is our cost, our profit and loss from operations per pound of meat processed. The far left side is where we ended 2019. In 2019, our average, we were losing $1, let's see, to be precise here, $1.01 per pound processed. From January on, and you can see that there's been dips and curves, we have increased up to so that we're actually positive in 2020 at the end of the year at a 0.095 profit per pound of meat processed. The basic idea to take away from this chart, by the way, is you want the black line to go up and you want the red line to go down. The green dotted line is the linear projection for where we are and where we're going to head to. The top line, the red line, is, and again, these are all per pound. The red line is our operational cost per pound. In other words, just what is it costing us in terms of operations to produce a pound? Operations here means payroll as well as the various products that Barry has to buy and machine repair and whatnot. It's everything but the financial costs. So in 2019, that's at the far left, our cost at the average cost in 2019 was $2.65 per pound. That's what it was costing us. By the end of 2020, we had dropped that cost to $1.86. Those are substantial improvements. And again, what we're looking for is for that red line to continue to go down because we want our operational cost per pound to go down, and we want the black line to go up because that is our P&L on an operational basis per pound of product. Barry, how about the next one? All right, this is a nice informative one about the actual volume that goes on in the plant. Up at the top are the actual individual numbers, and the yellow cells on the far right are the totals for the year for each species. If you look at the graph, there's a very thick black line, and that is the beef equivalent number. Beef equivalence is an industry standard where we can take hogs and lambs and translate them into beef numbers so that we have a comparison across plants or across our own business. So you can see where we started, by the way, and I'm sorry, the red is hogs, the green line is beef, and the blue line is lamb, and I did not put a line on for goats and veal. So you can see the beef equivalent line rising from January, which was, let's see, 134 beef equivalent units, and it ended the year at 176 in December. So we averaged out 156 beef equivalents. You can easily see the seasonality with lamb. What's interesting, and I think surprised us, was the amount of hogs that we were handling. I think that 2 years ago, we were thinking that it wouldn't be that high, and they're very consistent and the numbers are growing. So total for the year, all animals, we did 1,871 head of all kinds. For you beef guys, we did 967 head of beef, 620 head of lamb, and the leader in terms of total head count was hogs at 1906. Barry, next slide. All right, this is what Barry referenced earlier. This is our actual pounds of meat that have been processed in the plant. This information comes from our software, Quick Vista, VistaTrack. And I think this tells the story better than anything about the improvements at the plant and how we're doing. Once again, the green line is the trend line. But we started off in January of 2019 at around 30,000 pounds processed per month. And you can see where we ended up in December at 80,563 pounds. There's been, you consider the management changes, COVID issues, and I think that's a testimony to the quality of the people that we've hired at that plant. It's really a very strong showing. But again, don't forget, these are pounds processed. So the slaughter pounds for animals that didn't go through the processing plant aren't really reflected in here because it's not an easy way to just adjust for their slaughter. So this is pounds processed in all ways. Let's do the fourth slide. Okay. This one will take a little explaining. First of all, this is the Mary's, yeah, that's fine. 2019 actuals from the closeout, but without the audits, 2020 actuals, and the 2021 budget. The methodology here let's talk about the methodology for the budget for a second. What we did for the budget was we took the average of the fourth quarter of 2020, and we used that average for the fourth quarter of 2020 to be the baseline for our projections for the 2021 budget. We then built a spreadsheet that had the ability to increase different expenses at a different percentage rate and revenue at a different percentage rate, so that we could see what we could accomplish if we could hit certain volume goals. So you can see that's an aggressive budget, folks, and nobody's going to make believe that it isn't. The point I would make about it is that we actually had a $300,000 improvement from 2020 over 2019. So we're capable of that kind of focused operational improvement, and we think we can do it, but we aren't kidding ourselves. We're going to have to do a lot of things right to do that. Down at the bottom, the operational net, that's the EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. That's an actual number in 2019. That's what we lost. In 2020, we improved by 300,000, but lost 200,000. And in 2021, we're anticipating a positive 202,000 from operations. There, as you see at the top, we're also showing store revenue, which has been growing, and we think we can continue to grow that with more focus on it. And one other thing I'd call your attention to under the operation expenses is the hourly wage and what it's going to take for us to do this, which means hiring high quality people and paying them well. You can watch the hourly change, 520 to 584 to as high as 875 to hit these numbers. Our administrative salaries are relatively flat considering, and as is our overtime. I don't think that graph needs a lot of explanation. It's like it's a pretty straightforward line, and it's the angle, the ascent is steep, but we're fairly confident that we can do this, and this is the budget that we're going to be working towards. I think that's it. We can return to these. I'll answer questions about it when we have the open discussion period. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. And on to Sarah to give us an overview of the educational work at TLI. Great.
Hey there.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello. I'm gonna have Barry put my slides up when he gets a chance. Ugh. Awesome. Okay, so my name is Sarah Cogswell. I'm the program director at TLI. I work part-time for the nonprofit, and I've been there for about a year. So I just want to go over some highlights from the 2020 season. In collaboration with the Education Committee, we have accomplished a lot. It's been a lot of fun to work with John and other members of the committee. I just want to talk a little bit about the New England Grazing Network, for example. This is a group of, well, it's a team of farmers, scientists, agricultural professionals all across New England. And we gather with the help from a Cedar Tree Foundation grant to kind of offer education and TA for livestock producers. A lot of this education is based on grass-based systems. So we have, through that grant process, been able to work with Sam Glaze. So with Sam and UMass Extension, Sam has put on for TLI some amazing webinars. I listed one here. There was actually a 6-part webinar called Grazing and Forage Season Extension. You can view these seminars and webinars on TLI's website if you want to check them out under the seminars tab. Also the fencing clinic. Sam helped us out a lot there. We had scheduled pre-COVID a 1-day fencing clinic, and this was going to include Yale Forestry and 2 farms in Connecticut. So after COVID, we decided to keep the program rolling, but just film it. So on YouTube, on the New England Grazing Network YouTube, you can view these videos. They've been cut into smaller, more digestible clips, and they're amazing. As you can see, these little screenshots here, Bottle Farm in Connecticut helped us out, Nick Weinstock, and this is Hidden Blossom Farm. Those are just 2 really great videos to take a look at. Sam also conducted a number of farm visits this past spring and summer. So Sam kind of focused on grazing practices, pasture quality, soil fertility, and the management of the land. And this is kind of Sam's, you know, like day-to-day work. And she did an exceptional job on it. So with the farmers, she could basically test their soil, help them with their management plans, and then revisit this fall. So we have seen the results of that, and it's exciting work. So look forward to 2021 and more farm visits from Sam. We can go to the next slide, Barry. Some more highlights. TLI is always interested in workshops and reaching out to the greater community, particularly the customers of Meatworks, which are livestock producers. And in 2020, we did a Meatworks panel discussion at the CMAP Ag and Food Conference, talking about the recent changes and updates at Meatworks. And more recently, Barry was on a panel for the Vermont Grazing and Livestock Conference. So 2 good examples. And John hinted at this. We are now, well, John's using Meatworks data differently, but we're utilizing a lot of the VistaTrack data to further educate producers on their choices and overall profitability of utilizing and harvesting their livestock. So this chart here is an example of just a really simple, quick example of using the VistaTrack information. This is the average hot weight per month for pork. And you can see what we did when we put this out into our newsletter is we did one for pork, we did one for beef, and then we compared the national average. So moving forward, the Education Committee and I are going to be using data like this to make charts and to make other educational opportunities available. And like I mentioned, we utilize this chart in our monthly newsletter. We've also been working to increase our online presence, so social media, Facebook, Instagram, and that's really to kind of show not only the work that we're doing and highlight that, but also other areas, and particularly New England Grazing Network members. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of good workshops, so we just want to spread the news. You can go to the next slide, please. So 2021 is already upon us, and we're already going really hard. We're excited this year because we have some new connections. For example, the 4-H, Massachusetts 4-H. Hopefully, if it all allows, we'll have some of their teenage members taking a tour of Meatworks. And we're going to be talking to them about marketability and the profitability of the animals they're raising. That's an exciting project. Also, NRCS was very interested in the work that Sam was doing with the pasture analysis. And I think there's going to be a nice connection there as Sam continues to work with the farmers that she's already started a relationship with, and also the pasture plans to come in 2021. We're going to continue, as we said, to share Meatworks data. And one example is this carcass evaluation presentation. This is a little image, this is a sneak peek image at a presentation that we are putting on at the upcoming CMAP Ag and Food Conference. That starts this Sunday. So that's Joe Imenheiser from Connecticut Extension. And he was kind enough to come to Meatworks facility last week and film with us a beef carcass evaluation. And like I was saying, we're going to use that in this presentation this coming weekend. So I just want to do a quick plug for the CMAP Ag and Food Conference. TLI helped with a livestock track. So we also have a pastured poultry presentation from Bogside Acres, who is also a TLI member, and a really exciting chance to watch the film Sacred Cow and have a panel discussion with the film creator and director, Diana Rogers, and Wild Harmony Farm, who was mentioned and in the movie, just like Meatworks was. So that's going to be an exciting time. So again, this Sunday through Tuesday, sign up at the CMAP website. Beyond that presentation, we're also interested in using the Meatworks facility to do some cut sheet demos. And we really want to take our education to the next level in terms of what's the best way that our customers can utilize their animals. So we're exploring what that looks like. And Joe is also very good and has the equipment to do ultrasound demos. Again, thinking about conditioning, best time to harvest, and which down the road will ultimately give you the most bang for your buck. So the most profits per animal. All of that, we're hopefully going to kind of come round to and utilize at a one-day livestock conference. We would love to get back into the groove of having a livestock conference, and we're hoping that tentatively scheduled for early November 2021, we'll do such a thing. So whether we're physically together or not, we'll see, but we're really excited, and we're already planning and talking to industry consultants and other technical assistance providers like Joe about workshops that will happen. And if you go to the next slide. That is my contact information. And if you'd like to be a part of that, or if you have any other questions, you can reach out to me anytime. And thank you for listening.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. So now we're at the point of questions. And I believe that that Elizabeth outlined the process. Raise your hand, and John is going to sort of moderate and look for people to answer the questions on the board and the staff that can answer them. So now's the time for questions. Any discussion on what has been presented so far.
Right. Thanks, Andy. If, like, there's 50 people and I'll do my best to see the hands raised and try to get to everybody. Don't forget your mic is muted, so give us a chance to unmute you. And if we don't know your name or we don't see it on the screen, if you could identify yourself, that'd be awfully helpful. And again, this section of the Q&A should be focused on financial information, operational information, and things that Andy or myself or Sarah or Barry spoke about. So I see somebody, looks like Representative Paul Schmid up in the left-hand corner. Can we unmute him?
Thanks, John. Well, you all have made great progress and I want to congratulate you. Did I hear someone say that you're booked through 2022? Perhaps you could elaborate.
Barry, you want to grab that?
Yeah, what I meant by that was we have a policy where we're, at this point, we're booking out 18 months from the today's date, and the bookings that are now open have pretty much filled up for 2022.
I'm searching for hands. Oh, I see one down here that looks like Joe. Barry, can you unmute Joe, or can I do that?
Give me a second.
There we go.
Here we go.
This is Joe Emenheiser from Yukon Extension. Just quick question on the presentation of cost per pound for production. I was wondering if there was any difference. I would expect there to be difference, but if there was any information available on the difference between beef, pork, and lamb on a cost per pound basis, and if the ratios between those species might be expected to change one way or the other to ultimately influence profitability.
That's a great question. It's difficult for us to isolate the labor only for pork or for beef. We know that processing lamb is more expensive for us than processing everything else. And that's true across the industry. When I speak to other industry people, they all roll their eyes and shake their heads when it comes to doing lamb. I think we would find that pork is probably more profitable to cut and pack. But part of that processing number, by the way, also involves what's going on into further processing and smoke. So it's a little bit complicated. I'm hoping that this year we could go ahead and get more isolated numbers. We do keep P&Ls for different segments of our operation. In other words, I know what labor goes into our smoke room. I know what labor goes into the cut and pack, and what labor goes into the further processing, but we haven't broken it down by species. Good question. Anybody else? Somebody sent me a tip that I lost. That's an actual hand, Justin. Justin Shepard. Barry, do you see that?
I just got to find him in the list here. 1 second, Justin.
There he is.
Oh, hi, thanks. Justin Shepard from Revival Farm. Did the revenue include the money from the PPP loan, or is that separate?
Could you repeat the first part of that?
On the revenue numbers that you displayed earlier, did that include?
I think the 2020 number includes, I think it was an 80,000 PPE number that would have hit Andy, June, July. I think that's correct. Yes.
Thanks.
John, it looks like there's a participant named DLL that has a question. So if I can find DLL, I will unmute them. Okay.
Where is DLL?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Can you hear you? Yes.
Okay, I just had a question about the booking out. You booked out till 2023. how does that affect the small livestock person who needs to have some livestock done, but not on a regular basis like some of these larger companies do? Seems like every time I call for an appointment, there's nothing available for, 6, 8, 9 months out. How are we handling people who are raising a couple of animals a year? And how are we getting them appointments so that they can utilize the facility?
Barry?
That's a good question. We have a very active waiting list. There are movements on the waiting list on a weekly basis. So if you have an immediate need, you should email our administrative manager, Sue Motha, and her email is on our website. We can add you to the active waiting list. But in terms of getting bookings in advance, the only advice I can say is to get the bookings request in as soon as possible, as soon as you know you'll have a need. And we serve the booking request on a first come, first served basis.
Okay, so when I sent my last animal and you were only on a 2 or 3 month wait, now I've got a couple more that are going to be ready to go in, and now I'm hearing that you're on a year and a half wait.
When
And
was
the
your
other
last? When was your last animal?
in December,
Okay. What species are you working with?
cattle and goats.
Cattle is probably the most difficult of the animals to find bookings because of the demand and just the sheer time it takes to process them. So we have a limited amount of available slots for beef. But again, there are cancellations that happen on a regular basis. And if you email Sue, we will get you on the active waiting list.
Okay, and did I misunderstand, or are you dealing more with the larger scale operations rather than the smaller local operations?
We deal with all size operations from some of the largest in New England down to folks that have a couple in the backyard.
Okay, and then my last question is, how do you handle emergencies if we have an animal that's down and needs to be put down? How do you handle that? Do you have space available for emergency situations?
You give us a call and we'll do whatever we possibly can. In general, we can accommodate that.
I think
Okay.
it's been pretty clear over the last year, watching the operations. If there is an emergency, we will do everything that we can to facilitate a slaughtering of the animal. We've done this a couple of times, and we're Sue and Barry and the team work pretty well to address those kinds of needs. This issue of the small producers, I want to address that briefly in that it's really difficult. I mean, we need to have throughput to keep the facility on solid footing. And we are not dealing with the big aggregators at the moment, but we do see as the demand is increased with COVID and the focus on local food, we're seeing the growth of larger regional farms that are, doing well. They're thriving, and some of them are on this call tonight. And our Meatworks is we are trying to grow with them without losing sight of the small local producers like yourself. But it's difficult, and it's not. The board established a policy back probably a year ago that we would only take bookings through 18 months, not 20 months, but through 18 months. And every month we roll into another month that will take bookings, because it seemed that booking it out 2 years in advance was not fair at all to the small producers. And that was something that we talked a lot about at the board level.
Thank you.
See another hand up. It looks like Aaron W. Aaron. There's Aaron. Mary,
Yep. We're good, John. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So John, I don't want to get too far into the financial weeds, but curious if you could give us a couple of highlights of some of the assumptions that went into the 2021 budget, with regards to being able to, move into that profitability. Just given the level of bookings you guys had in 2020, I'm just curious what the 2021 assumptions were to get to that level of profitability.
Sure, there were probably 7 or 8 different variables that we threw in. One was there was a moderate price increase over the 2019-2020 pricing, and that should have been reflected in 2021. We think that the store can not only do a higher volume, but we think that the store can have a higher margin. And that's something we just simply haven't paid attention to. The store has done quite well, but we're confident it can do better. We're also pretty confident that the numbers that we hit, the 70 and 80,000 pounds per month, are sustainable. That again depends upon hiring and keeping and paying well talented people. There's just no way around it. It's the single most critical thing that we do is hiring people. And to put some of this in the right context, what we are doing is taking labor and transforming it into product. But that means that we're really dependent on quality labor to get this done. I think the other things that we looked at was tighter controls on our expenses. As we've learned how to run the business, we've seen places where we overspent on supplies or products, and we've learned how to negotiate better. And I think that there's probably 1 or 2 more minor items that contributed to our optimism. I guess that would be the way I would look at it. I'll say again, even though you didn't ask, it's an optimistic budget. We're going to have to hit on all cylinders all the time to get there. Thanks for the question, Aaron. I see another hand, Justin Shepard again.
Hey, thanks for taking another question from me. Given that you're booking out 18 months, that seems to make a lot of sense for beef, where they're on the hoof for 18 to 24 months. I raise hogs, and right now I'm booking appointments for animals that aren't even bred yet. Any thoughts to adjust that based on species so that you can have at least a confirmed pregnancy before you're able to book an appointment?
Barry?
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, we are aware that the bookings create some challenges for planning, and we'll be working with the board. The facility will be working with the board to try to figure out how to handle that in the near future.
Yeah, because I took the available slots that I had for this year, and right now I've got 4.5-month-old pigs going in May, so they're going to be really small, almost roasters, and not for retail cuts. Is there thoughts of even a secondary market where I've got bookings done, but there's sort of a chat room or somewhere I can trade dates with other farms that have dates around where I need, but we could swap them out?
We try not to swap dates, only because it creates some operational confusion. But I think in your case, Justin, we can work with you to try to fit in as slots become available, and you'll be we'll be able to work with you and accommodate you, I think, to a pretty high degree. We should chat again in the next few days and talk about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
John, Carter Wilkie had a question.
Yeah, I see it. Carter, let's be candid. The store could use a little bit more window dressing. It could look little bit nicer. Hopefully we could get some different display cabinets, maybe some more information in there. That all takes a commitment, and it all takes some extra funds that we're going to have to find. But the store has surprised us in how resilient it's been and how consistent. I think that as we find more time, and we have some people on the board, I see Jesse's here on the call, Jesse Delo, we can work a better retail experience into the store, and we can, I think, do a little more sophisticated butchery. I think we know some people who would be interested in finding high quality animals and cutting them differently. So we're optimistic that we can have the store expand its services and its offerings, as well as making sure that we've got stuff priced right. Anybody else? Any other questions? Oh, is that Josh? Let's unmute Josh. I think you're unmuted, Josh.
Hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so getting back to the financials, I know it showed an operations loss of 211,000. I didn't see in there where reflected donations. And obviously being on the board, I know that the president has put in some substantial money. I was wondering if you want to share with the members how much money that was. And in 21, if we do end up having a loss again, and say the president does not add to keep the meatworks going, what will happen then?
Does the president choose to answer?
You know, I have absolutely supported TLI through a lot. We are at this point close to break even, as I said earlier. And I think there are several major stakeholders that we've had conversations that will continue to support TLI. I'm not going to support TLI alone, absolutely not. But I think that the feedback and the support that I have had, and we have had, the board has had, the team has had, as we've gone through 2020 and now into 2021, speaks for itself. And it wasn't, you know, the MDAR supported us. We had the PPP loan, obviously, from the federal government for COVID issues, private foundations, and dollars that I put in. But obviously, the TLI's got to stand on its own, and I expect that it is going to.
Thanks, Andy. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yes, that is Chuck Curry. Did you find him, Barry?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah,
Chuck.
So I just had a question about as you become more, if you do become financially solvent and start turning a profit in the next year or this year and the year following, I was wondering if you would be looking into re-looking at your policy of reimbursement for meat rendered unsaleable when we bring it to Meatworks. Just my own experience, you know, I'm a small producer. I do about 5 beef, 30 lambs, and about 40 hogs a year. And I'd love to be able to use Meatworks, but unfortunately, the first and only time I used them, I sent in a beef cow. It was rendered unsaleable by some bone got in with the ground meat, and there's chunks of bone and everything, and I was unable to sell it. And so I was reimbursed, you know, what it cost us, what we sell the beef for, and what I'd already had it sold through a CSA program for. But going forward, the board made a determination that they'd be setting the prices that people would be reimbursed for if a situation like that came up again. So me being a small producer, if, you know, for instance, I lose one cow is 1/5 of my beef for the year. If I lose that, I can't afford not have that beef for 20% of the year. And also, if I'm only reimbursed at their cost, which is about half, or what their rates are. It's only about half or less of what I'm actually getting, what I've already sold that beef to CSA members for. And so I just can't afford to take a few $1,000 hit on a cow that gets rendered unsaleable. So for me, I'm unable to use Meatworks until they amend that policy and make it so that they're going to reimburse me at the cost at which we have the meat sold for as producers.
Chuck, I'm sorry to hear that you had that mishap with us. And I am sorry to hear that. I raised this question with, there's a national organization of small meat producing plants that goes across the nation. And I raised that question with all the small meat producing plants and asked them what their policy was. The answer was that basically they didn't have a policy. They, quote, try to make it right. But the answer for try to make it right was as varied as we give them credit, we do this, we do that. And it seemed to me that a starting point here was to point to the USDA wholesale prices as a basis for any reimbursement, which is, I'm finding out, more than other people have been willing to do. We'll look at any policy changes that the members think serves them better. I think the difficulty for a small plant like us is, how do we guarantee your profit? We can cover your costs, but for us to take on the responsibility of covering your profit right now seems difficult. That doesn't mean we wouldn't, it doesn't mean we shouldn't. It means that we have to have a much more coherent policy and try to understand what your costs are and what you've lost. So I think it's a great question. And again, I'm sorry you had that experience, but I think that going forward, that's what the board needs to do is to listen to see if there's other ways that we can compensate people if we do something that's a mistake. Thanks for that question, by the way. Anybody else?
Pat McNiff.
Where's Pat? There's that. Hey, Pat.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hey, you know, I do have to say that everyone has been doing a great job at Meatworks. It's been quite the year. So, and Barry and Sue and Justin, everyone have done a really great job. But the question I have a little bit is, you know, one of the things looking at your profitability in terms of pork, you know, one of the things I talk to Barry a lot of times is the difference between having 10 pigs cut 10 different ways versus 10 pigs cut all the same way in terms of production efficiencies. And, you know, that the cost is the same whether I cut, you know, 20 pigs 20 different ways or one way and with one cut sheet. And I just wanted to just kind of bring it up in terms of the board to think about either some kind of price change, because it does make you guys more efficient in terms of production because you can assembly line cuts versus having to keep on changing cut sheets and keep on changing what people are doing based on that kind of thing. And it's not to penalize people doing multiple cuts, but it is to kind of maybe just to say that that is a process efficiency that allows you guys to make more money per hog than each one being different.
It's at the core of our operational discussions. You know,
Yep.
the pricing for our services, the issue of increasing the efficiency and keeping our labor costs is the key to the functioning of Meatworks. And what you've just talked about is right at the core of it. But so how do you address the problem? I mean, we have our operations committee meets on a regular basis. I think we are talking about cut sheets. We are talking about efficiency. Is it fair to have two or three pricing structures for the complexity of the cut sheets? That's something that we are talking about. Absolutely, we're talking about it. And you are.
Yeah, or just even the idea of like, here's a basic cut sheet and that's, you know, this price. And if you start
Right.
getting more like crown roasts and everything else, it becomes the deluxe cut sheet. And then it's a different price point, you know, and that's not necessarily people are forced to make a decision, like they're forced into something, but they get to choose between two things. And then a lot of people who do holds might decide, I'm not going to offer 20 different options to my customers. I'm going to offer, they get pork chops, they get, whatever it might be, to simplify.
I mean, the interesting thing, Pat, about what you're touching on here and what we've heard in this session is that you have the small producers with 1 or 2 animals that are having trouble getting spots because they're just scheduling and they're small producers versus someone like yourself who is a major producer that it is a very important piece of our future. We understand that, and we're trying to marry the two.
Sure.
And it would be great to get further input from you on this topic as we move forward.
Yeah.
We'd like that.
Again, things have improved a lot since we've had some issues, and I think it's going really well. And I'm not trying to kind of create a 2-tier, but I am saying that maybe there's a way to simplify things so that you guys you don't incur that cost also that then affects everybody down the road because of the labor costs.
I mean, one of the things that you've got to do in an organization like this is I think you've got to be flexible and address the needs of the community. And the community is diverse. It includes folks like yourself, like Blackbird, that are bringing substantial animals through this facility that we want to service. But at the same time, you hear the Chuck Currys, or you hear this lady that we just talked about can't get a booking, and maybe there's we're trying to work through these problems. We don't have all the solutions. I want to make that clear, but I think we are making progress trying to attack them.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Pat. I'll take 2 more questions because we still have a lot of stuff to go through tonight. So if we can have just 2 more questions, then we'll move on. If there aren't any more questions, then I'm going to turn it over to Andy and Elizabeth and Joyce to talk about the next phase of our meeting. I don't see any questions popping up. Thanks everybody for participating. We're all making notes about the concerns that have come up. And as Andy said, it's, we'll be focused on some of these for sure. So at this point, let's call this part of the meeting over, and Andy, it's on to the next phase.
The business side of the meeting. Thank you, John. Over the last year, we have focused a great deal of time and energy on building the board's capacity and professionalism in order to strengthen our overall operations, which in turn will enable the expansion of our work. Given that we are now managing an organization with over 1.5 million in revenue and 25 employees, such improvements are critical. The main achievement, the main achievement of this work was the establishment and implementation of a formal committee structure in 2020, including executive, finance, operations, education, and marketing committees that have been working well throughout most of the year. In addition to directors that work on the various committees, we have several advisors that bring specific expertise to individual committees. We are looking to further build capacity through the committee structure in 2021 and look forward to many of you helping us out there. We're always looking for help, always looking for volunteers. As part of the work to strengthen the organization, the executive and governance committees started our annual meeting preparation by looking closely at our bylaws. Even though the bylaws were written and then revised twice by very qualified legal professionals, we found the bylaws to have numerous ambiguities, conflicting clauses, and a few major flaws. For example, the old bylaws provided that all membership expired on December 31st. Tonight, there would have been few members if we had operated under the old bylaws. The most significant issues was that the directors elected the members and those members elected the directors, a self-perpetuating structure that did not seem fair or reasonable to the executive and committee and governance committee members. After many hours struggling to understand the mechanics and to revise the bylaws with our attorney, Bob Feingold, we presented the revised bylaws to the TLI board a week ago and then voted to affirm the new bylaws at a special board meeting last night. We have cleaned up many of the ambiguities and conflicting clauses. We have addressed the elected member problem by increasing the number of directors to 11 and having 3 of those seats voted on by all qualified members at the annual meeting. The bylaws go into effect when the board approves. So all the qualified members will be voting this evening on the 3-member elected seats and the existing directors voting on all the new directors. In a few minutes, the chair of the governance committee will provide nomination for all 11 seats and will accept nominations from the floor for the 3-member elected seats. This process of cleaning up and improving the bylaws will continue. We needed to at least take this first step to rationalize the existing bylaws. We are committed to working with all members of the community we serve to improve our bylaws and our organizations. Elizabeth will describe how the voting process will work, and then Joyce will run the nomination and voting process. Elizabeth?
Hi, folks. So I'd just like to take a minute to do a brief summary of how the voting will work. Members who are eligible to vote will be sent a Google poll link that will arrive momentarily to the email address that you used for your membership. On the ballot, you'll see the names of existing nominees, as well as any names that are raised on the floor. Please note, our bylaws specify a cutoff for voting eligibility at the annual meeting. That cutoff was 5:30 p.m. on Friday, February 19th. If you registered as a member after that time, you will not receive a link to the poll. If you have questions or think you are potentially eligible to vote, but you do not receive the ballot in your email, please use the raise hand function to alert me and we will address it. Votes will be tallied, verified, and results will be emailed following the meeting. Board members, please take note that you are going to be receiving 2 ballots, which both need to be completed. Joyce will be asking if there are any nominees from the floor momentarily, and we will include those on the ballot. At that time, we ask that you use the chat room to bring to the floor names of any additional nominees. Joyce, are you ready to take over?
Unmute, Joyce. Joyce,
Hold on, Joyce.
you're muted.
Joyce. Barry, can you Joyce, you got to unmute yourself. There we go.
did it.
You got to start from scratch, Joyce.
I'm wondering if a slide that shows the slate is available that I sent in.
Barry? Oh, there we go.
Okay, great, thanks. So, not that I can read it. So this is going to show our board of directors that the board will be voting to replace vacancies every year. And since our bylaws in the past had us expire every year on December 31st, our board is vacant. And so the board is going to be voting on filling the 8 slots that are voted by the directors. So that's the first part. And only the board of directors will get that ballot. The second ballot is going to arrive to all the eligible members momentarily after we review these, these names. I was going to, okay, I got it. So our slate that the board, which is the nominating committee, came up with a slate of 3 directors to be voted on by the membership, but the floor is also open to more nominations that you can put into the chat box. But we came up with Richard Kane, who is a lawyer and he lives in South Dartmouth, who believes that farms and open space deserve protection. Kevin McAuliffe is our second director that has been an advisor for our TLI for many years. As well, Andrew Weiner is in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. He's a current employee at the Copycat Farms and a local ag supporter. So at this point, you can look for a ballot that will, so what I need you to do is if there's nominations from the floor, I need you to type them into the chat box. And Elizabeth will be adding them to the membership ballot. So you have 5 minutes to type names into the chat box. Are there any questions?
Is the chat box open, Barry? Good, thank you.
Okay.
Chuck
so-
Curry has a question there.
I see that. Hang on, Chuck. I think, not yet. While I'm waiting for Chuck to get on, Chuck, you're on mute. You are, no, you're still muted.
Okay.
I was just, all right, we kind of just glossed over that change of bylaws things. It seems like a change of bylaws. The original bylaws or the most recent ones from 2019 say that the members have the right to repeal or amend any bylaw changes done by the board of directors. And so I think that I feel that, that's my feeling, but we should maybe see how it goes with a vote. But I think the new bylaws should be reviewed. We should have a chance to review the bylaws before voting on them, and not have these bylaws that are just put in the night before a meeting. Nobody has a chance to review them. And, I think we should really, as a membership, look at the new bylaws and vote on them before enacting them. Because basically, it seems to me now that the new bylaws are taking the power to elect directors away from the members and into the hands of the directors. And I did read the old bylaws and the new bylaws. And so it seems to me that might not be in the best interest of the membership to completely strip their power to change the board of directors in the future.
Chuck, our attorney is here, Bob Feingold, and I think he can do the best job of explaining all the ins and outs of this. And in the meantime, I'm encouraging people to enter names in the chat box for people that you would like to nominate for the at-large member seats. Bob, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Could be a little bit louder.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So, Chuck, we studied the old bylaws and the new bylaws very, very carefully over a period of time. The old bylaws had a curious feature, and it was that all members lost their membership on December 31. So if we kept that, no members would have a vote at all. And also, both the old bylaws and the new bylaws do not require member ratification of amendments by the board. The old and new bylaws said that the board of directors could amend the bylaws, and as soon as that happens, they're in effect. It says that the the members have the right to further amend or reject the board's changes. And that would happen at an annual meeting after notice of the member who wants a change. So if the members don't like the bylaws, they are free to make a motion to change or reject them at the next annual meeting, but not here, because there's no requirement that the bylaws that were enacted by the board last week and affirmed again last night, there's no requirement that the members ratify them.
So I have a couple issues with that. So one, there are a number of people here who have renewed their membership between December 31st and now. They've had 2 months almost to do so. So I don't think that's an unreasonable. I mean, yeah, it's not convenient, but I don't think it's a reason to completely change our bylaws here. And also, like you said, you just specifically stated that the membership does have the right to repeal or review bylaws, but you said there needs to be some sort of notice. So it seems to me kind of not right if you guys were to change the bylaws the night before and not allow members to have sufficient notice to change it at that meeting. And also, if we decide to change or repeal those bylaws at this meeting, then new bylaws aren't in effect anyway. And, I'm not a lawyer, but I also, I mean, you're a lawyer, but that doesn't mean you have any more right to telling us all what is correct and what's not. I mean, I hope people have read the bylaws. We all have our own interpretations. Your interpretation as a lawyer, I don't think makes it any more valid than my interpretation, reading it myself and as a member of a livestock institute.
I see another question from Brandon. Can somebody unmute Brandon? By the way, we're not seeing any nominations come in from the floor. Is there a problem with the chat room? Brandon,
yeah, my question was, I read the new bylaws you have, and doesn't it affect checks and balances of this organization? Now the board, it looks like, just votes upon the board, and I know I'm a new member here, but I don't think that's very good for you guys.
Andy, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a difference between a nonprofit and the United States Constitution. Nonprofit bylaws aren't designed.
What I'm getting at. I think I'm just saying, any nonprofit should have a checks and balances, and
if
a board voting on a board is a little weird.
In most of the charitable boards that I have participated in over my career, the board nominates and elects the board. It's not universal, but that's the way it is. In this case, the governance committee has decided to split it, 8 and 3. That was the decision that they made.
I mean,
Brandon,
Brandon,
this is a membership-based organization, though. It's not just a standard nonprofit. It's a membership-based organization, and it's basically stripping the members of their rights.
Wait a second. The way the bylaws, as we started to, I think I stated pretty clearly, I thought that the biggest flaw in these bylaws was the provision that the board elected the members, and those members then elected the directors, 100%. It's go look at the old bylaws. The language is there. We went over it last night in some detail. And it's not fair. And I agree exactly what you're saying, Brandon. There should be member involvement, and there will be member involvement in this organization so that it's not completely, there's got to be participation, and there's participation. We're all members, but there will be director spots that will open up on this board, and members have to be elected as directors. So there's just 2 classes here. You have members that are elected by all members, and there's a group of directors that are elected by the directors. And
And
that,
if I might bring up another democratic feature of these bylaws, Brandon. The
Yeah.
directors and officers are elected every year, just like the members. And there's 3 classes. So it's not a self-perpetuating situation. Also,
What is that part of? Can you say that? Oh,
sure, I'll repeat it. The officers and directors are voted, their terms are only 1-year terms. After the first phase, and we're phasing in. There was a decision made by the governance committee that you don't want to change all the directors every year because you need continuity, just like in the United States Senate. The Senate, there's a 1/3 are voted every 4 years, as I recall. So what the governance committee decided is that we're going to have three classes of board members. So for this year, we're going to have few for
it's
1
gonna be
year,
for
a
3,
few for
right?
2 year, a few for 1 year, a few for 2 years, and a few for 3 years, and then after that, everybody will go off every year. Both the member elected directors and the board elected directors. One other feature is that if the members decide, or if any one member decides that he doesn't like a feature of the bylaws, he can make a motion for consideration of a change at the next annual meeting, but he has to give a certain amount of notice.
I see a question from Vince. Let's see if you can get you unmuted.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. And actually, the first couple of years that TLI was an organization, I hesitated to join because I didn't think the existing bylaws really made much sense, particularly because of that phrase, the members elect the directors and the directors elect the members. I mean, that's really just nonsensical. So, I would suggest that people definitely pass along their comments on these new bylaws to the TLI board. I know they're generally pretty responsive, but I just wanted to say, I think they are definitely an improvement and make a lot more sense to me anyways.
Just a second, I see somebody named Frank has a hand up.
Can you hear me, John?
Yep.
Yeah, John, I think that the election part of this, unfortunately for me, it colors a lot of the earlier part. You guys highlighted a lot of the hard work that you've done over the past year, and it looks like you're making a lot of progress and doing things well. I was more happy with my experience there this year than in years past. But I do think that the way the board of directors meeting over the past couple of days and then voting yesterday, just before this meeting, it colors it for me, because I think Chuck has an excellent point. This is a members-based organization. And, yes, there's recourse now. The members can do something for next year's meeting. But there are multiple classes of directors now and multiple classes of members. It taints things and not in a good way.
Let me respond to that. First of all, as Andy said, we're all members. Every one of us on the board is a member. So it's a little artificial to say that there's members and then there's directors. Every director is a member. Second, I think that it's important to note that the membership can ask for a special meeting, ask the board for a special meeting to discuss this issue and to make changes. I think the third thing I'd point out is that once on the board, every director has the same vote. There's no different class of votes. Every director has the same power, the same vote, the same responsibilities, and the same obligations. So once you're on the board, you're on the board. You're a member on the board without any prejudice in any way. I think the fourth thing that hasn't been brought out is that the nominating committee is going to definitely be composed of the member at large, so that they'll have a voice in what gets nominated, as well as the members at the regular meeting who can nominate from the floor. I think this is an awkward transition. I don't think there's any way we can describe it as anything but awkward. The problem is that the old bylaws were reminiscent of older nonprofits where there was a board of directors that appointed a board of trustees that then turned around and appointed the board of directors. I think I saw somebody here on the board here on this call that I think has that experience with the trustees and knows how that works. That didn't strike us as being the way we wanted to go. The idea then was to expand the directorships and make sure that we had input from people who weren't on the board as to who they would want to see on the board. Is this an ideal situation, Frank? No, you know, I think all of us would say it feels awkward. It is legal. It's an improvement over what was there previously. And if it needs to be changed, then somebody needs to put forth a formal motion and a formal request. And I think you'll find all of us responsive to trying to address those questions. Anybody else? I hope I answered your question, Frank, or made some comments. Somebody named Aaron up in the corner again.
Actually, I was going to say, I think Josh has had his hand raised a few times. If we want to jump to him before my comments.
Oh, I didn't see his hand, his like little.
He's physically got his hand up. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Josh, let me get you unmuted.
So I do agree with what Chuck has brought up and other members with the change of the 8 director seats are being voted on by the directors. It just seems like, as a member-based organization, that now the members only get 3 votes out of the 8. Not that it's the current members against the 3 new members, but there's also another part in the bylaws where it says of removal. And it says at any time, the board of directors can remove any director with or without cause. So that's really not giving anyone security in those 3 seats that are getting nominated from the floor. And also the point of the 2.1 in the bylaws where it says that the directors elect the members and then the members elect the directors. In the old bylaws, that same wording is still in the new bylaws. So it hasn't been changed. And it also says with continued support of the organization. Well, who qualifies if you have continued support? That's the directors are still electing the members. It's the same wording.
Some of that is accurate. I don't believe all of it is. The phrase about being able to remove a director with or without cause was in the old bylaws as well. That wasn't changed. It was brought over. I think Bob removed the sentence about the directors electing the members electing the, I think that's been removed. I think we've also gone over this point fairly well at this point. So I see Darren Mendez has his hand up. Let's unmute Darren, please.
Okay, so we're very fortunate tonight to have on our call Doug Gillespie from the Massachusetts Farm Bureau Federation, and he's got a ton of experience with nonprofits. So I would like to hear what Doug has to say about this situation. Thank you.
Is Doug a member of the? Where is Doug? I'm sorry, I don't see a Doug. Anybody? see Erin's got her hand up. I don't,
I would say, I think while Barry wants to try and find Doug, if he's on the line, I will comment. I have an agreement with some of the points that have been raised by Chuck and Josh and a few others. Most of my background's more in, it's not in nonprofit boards, but I still do find some of these changes irregular. And I apologize, Squeaky here is a little talkative tonight. It just, especially, I guess I'm just kind of curious with the publication of these amendments to the bylaws, and just kind of, why they got voted on last night versus being brought to the, the members' attention, for some further discussion like we are having right now. I'm sorry. He of course needs to talk right now. And then just, I guess I am just, I do find it a little peculiar. Again, I'm not as familiar with nonprofit bylaws. I've, more familiar with some for-profit entities, agricultural cooperatives like Ocean Spray and their board structure, where a majority of the board members are elected by the membership, which I guess I would have expected for TLI. So I am a little surprised myself, given the amount or the number of board of directors that are appointed by the board, with regards to it being a supermajority versus, say 3 of the 11. So again, just echoing some common concerns with other members and their voices tonight.
Andy, do you want me to address some of these issues?
Sure, Bob.
First of all, neither the old nor the new bylaws, I saw a question, neither the old nor the new bylaws require ratification by the members of amendments by the board. If a member wants to make changes, suggested, thinks something should change, they can do that. Both the old and the new bylaws provide that they have to make a motion, with some notice before the annual meeting. Very importantly, a number of people have tonight mentioned that there was a meeting last night of the board. The reason there was a meeting last night of the board was because when they sent me the bylaws that they adopted a week ago, I noticed a technical irregularity. And so I suggested, and the board agreed, to have a confirmation vote because of that technical problem in the wording. So it wasn't that they were trying to do it at the last minute. It's because I saw a technicality that needed to be corrected by an affirming vote.
We actually, can I also add to that, Aaron? I mean, second what John said. We've spent an incredible amount of time and energy trying to sort through these bylaws. I think everybody on the call that has commented, the idea that the directors elect the members and then the elected members elect the directors seems not workable. And that issue really hit us hard. And there was a question, how do you affect the change of these bylaws within the structure of the old bylaws, the new bylaws, the amendments that Bob just talked about? And we went forward and presented the bylaws and voted on them a week ago, the same bylaws that were affirmed last night. So it's not as if we voted the bylaws were circulated to all directors before the meeting a week ago. And there was full discussion at that meeting on how we thought this process should evolve, which obviously when Bob Feingold, our attorney, felt there was need for clarifications, we agreed to move forward with the affirmation vote last night.
And the bylaws were distributed to the membership a week ago with the annual meeting notice on the web.
I
So
see,
is-
by the way, the nominations from the floor have been closed. Just so you know, missed that in the chat room. And that means that Joyce will soon be sending out the email ballots once Elizabeth gets all of the names for the at-large directors placed on a ballot, and then that will go out. And I think Elizabeth will rejoin us to remind us all how we're supposed to behave with the ballots. But just to be clear, the nominations have been closed. I see somebody with the initial P would like to speak. Oh, it's Mr. McNeff. And I see Chuck. Did you have your hand up again, Chuck Curry? All right, let's see if I can get to Pat first and then back to Chuck. Trying to get you unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me? There we go.
Yes.
So just two things, just having been the president of the Livestock Association of Rhode Island and dealt with, I know this is never easy, these meetings and getting prepared for them and stuff. Just for future with bylaws changes, one of the things we always used to do was that bylaws had to be out and changes had to be put out 30 days in advance of the meeting, the annual meeting. That allowed a lot more time for people to digest it and bring up these concerns earlier. I think a week is really tough. Again, I know you guys have a lot going on, but just my experience has been a 30-day window is a better window and pretty standard. And a lot of nonprofit boards I've been on, the bylaw changes are a 30-day thing. So that's one. The other thing I just wanted to bring up too, there, I don't know if there's any restrictions. There's no offense to Copacut, but there's 3 members nominated from the same farm on the nominations. I don't know if that's allowed in the bylaws or how that works, but just as a point of order, for a membership-based organization, I don't know, and no offense to those guys, but there's 3 people from one business, so I don't know if how that you guys deal with that.
Can we get over to Chuck? Did you still want to say something? Let's see if we can get Chuck unmuted here.
Yeah, I just had a question. You said Bob referred to him as our lawyer. Who is he representing? Is he hired by the Livestock Institute, or who is paying?
Yes. Bob's been working with us at the Livestock Institute here on several different matters over the last year or so.
So he's been hired by the board.
Yes. So have there been any nominations from the floor?
There was one for Mr. Frary from Copacut Farm. The other one was Kevin, who is already on the nomination ballot. But Mr. Frary was discussed about being a director because he's been very helpful with the plant. But I think one of the reasons why we did not put him on the ballot is because his wife, Elizabeth, is already on the board. And so Vincent said that he would take the role of just being a helper and advisor instead of being a director. So we do recognize that that's a very good question that Chuck brought up, that it might not be good to have a lot of people from the same farm. What do you think? Oh, Vincent, would you like to say something?
Agree. Don't vote for me. Don't. That's fine. I'm happy to pull the nomination. That seems reasonable and fair.
And I would also say that Andy Weiner is a young gentleman who is working on several different farms, not only Copacut, but he's working over in Rhode Island as well, and obviously has been involved in the family food business and is well-known in our area. So what's the process here, Elizabeth and Joyce, on the voting?
So I think, Elizabeth, are you ready to send the ballot to the members and the ballot to the board of directors?
Yes, I am, Joyce. I can do that. Please be patient. Give us about 5 minutes for us to put the final touches on it and send it out. What will occur is you'll receive it in your email. You can fill it out at any point during the meeting, and then we'll tally it and verify the names of voting members, and then we'll email out the results, just because it'll take us a little bit of time to compile it.
I just wanted to say that there is time on the agenda for discussion after this voting process to talk about that. It doesn't have to be the next annual meeting, that we can have a special meeting of the membership to discuss these bylaws. And we would, I think we would welcome suggestions on how we can make this more democratic. I was probably one of the people that said, we need to have 8 people on the board to continue the projects that we've been doing the last year. And how do we make sure that those projects get done? And I think it is a 2-year term. I'm not sure, Bob, but I think it's a 2-year term after we get done with this initial entrance onto the board.
Joyce, it's a 1-year term.
Oh, it is 1? Okay, I thought it was 1 year just for the officers.
So we made a, that's one of the reasons why we did 3 classes of board members, so we wouldn't lose everybody at once. So there's always going to be 2/3 of a board left once we make the transition.
So I started thinking about if we make it so that the majority of the directors are voted by the membership. I started thinking, okay, now who are we going to lose on the projects we're working on? And so I did wonder about the philosophy of having the majority be voted by the directors. It does go against your initial feeling, but I think Bob is familiar with trying to have these nonprofits continue their work and not have a huge turnover every year.
Joyce,
Pat?
I see Pat McNeff has a question. Let me interrupt and get back to Pat.
Yeah, I just had a quick, Joyce had mentioned that only one person was nominated from the floor, and I know one of them was already on the nominating. I saw 4 nominations. Is that correct?
Sorry.
Yes, Joyce, if
or 3, or I guess 3, I don't know, but.
Okay, I couldn't see them, sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that all those got captured, that's all.
Okay.
The ballot was just sent out, and it will have the 3 nominees that the board mentioned. That will be Richard Kane, Kevin McAuliffe, and Andrew Weiner. It will also have the addition of Darren Mendes and Chuck Curry, and Vince Frary has asked for his name to be removed, even though he was nominated. So when you receive the ballot, you will see those 5 names.
Sorry.
If anyone does not receive a ballot and thinks that they are eligible for voting, again, the bylaws specify that cutoff as 5:30 p.m. on Friday, February 19th. Please feel free to raise your hand, and we would be happy to send you a provisional ballot that we would then verify and count.
So, Bob, if they wanted to give amendment suggestions to the bylaws, that would be done in writing to the board, and with a notice. It doesn't have to be the annual meeting. It could be a special meeting, correct?
I mean, there's two questions. First, the special meeting has to be called by the directors, and that can happen at any time. And there's no particular process for bringing it to the attention of the board, but if you want to make sure you have a vote, then you have to make a formal motion in sufficient time before the annual meeting, or if there's going to be a special meeting. It has to be, there has to be sufficient notice. And as I recall, it was 1 week for an amendment, but let me just take a look and make sure that's still the case. Hold on. All right, Article 9. Oh, wait a minute, that wouldn't be.
So my question also is, does the motion have to be made tonight, or can it just be relayed to the board?
There can be no vote tonight.
No, the motion or the proposal to amend the bylaws. Does that have to come up tonight, or can it just be having people contact the board?
People contact the board.
Okay. Cheryl's got her hand up.
I'm busy voting. Hang on. If somebody can get to Cheryl and unmute her, that would be helpful.
Can you hear me?
In answering your question, Joyce, I believe 2.8 requires a 1 week notice, 7 days.
And then we could have a special meeting.
No, the special meeting has to be voted on by the board.
I have a question. I didn't receive a ballot. I did have some complications with removing an old email address and updating my email address. I didn't get the updated agenda this afternoon as well. So I did not receive to either my old email or my new email a ballot. Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl. It went to your, let me be discreet. It went to your Outlook. Do you see it there?
I don't see it.
Actually, I don't see it either.
Okay. Joyce, yours went to your Yahoo.
It could be just my Yahoo's asleep.
Yes. If anyone's having trouble viewing it, you may want to peek at your spam as well.
Well, I just received emails like the other day from Sarah. Oh, it popped in.
Oh, good.
I see Mr. Mendez has his hand up. Can we unmute Darren for a comment, please?
Two things. Could we clarify the 3-day time period to become a membership? Because I don't ever remember that being in the bylaws.
The
And I
new
do
bylaws.
remember last year signing people up at, we had a table out front at our at our annual meeting, signing people up to vote then. And I have a gentleman that's not computer savvy with me, Rick Hanato, and I'm wondering how, I didn't get an email for his vote. I used my email. I'm wondering how he can vote.
The 3-day provision was in the new bylaws. That's the first question. I don't know how to answer the question of Rick Hanatow's vote without an email address. Elizabeth, is there a way to deal with that?
I think, you know what to do is I think you could try to just submit it twice. So submit it once, Darren, with your name and your email address. And if you would like to submit one with Rick's name and your email address, as long as that matches his membership information, it should work. Does that make sense?
And he has to be qualified.
Yes. So
he is
as
qualified.
long as we're going to verify it with his name, the information that you submitted with your membership. So as long as his membership information matches his voting information, it will be a valid vote.
I think we're getting on to the point where we're exhausted the Q&A session. I don't know when we'll have the balloting tabulated, but I don't believe we're going to stay on the Zoom call while we wait for that, are we?
The plan was not to. Were there any other comments? I know that Darren had mentioned someone from the Farm Bureau wanted to speak and we couldn't find him. Darren, or what's status there?
Is Doug Gillespie in the,
No, Doug had to get off onto another call.
okay.
Then Andy, I guess I would ask you to make the closing remarks and wind this up. But first, I think Elizabeth, can you give us an idea as to what will happen with the tabulations?
Sure. So we're asking that you can fill out your voter ballot sometime in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And I can't see it taking more than an hour or two for us to verify everything and compile it. And then we can send out an email with the results. So later this evening, if we run into issues at the latest tomorrow morning, but I'm thinking we can probably do it sometime in the next couple hours. You'll receive an email from the Livestock Institute with the results of the voting.
And the ballots will be preserved and you'll be getting your receipt back once you fill out your Google form. So all of this will be available to verify without any problem. Andy?
Great. Well, this process has been difficult and it's distracted. I think someone made the comment that it's distracted from the progress that we've made. I would agree. But I would also say that the issues that we're trying to deal with these issues as best we can and run this organization in a professional, straight up fashion. And that's our objective. And if there are any questions that you have about how it's being operated, please come forth with it. And I think it's been clear from Joyce, from John, that the further changes to these bylaws, fine, let's keep moving. But they didn't work the way they were. And they needed to be changed. We couldn't even operate the meeting. I mean, any event, I think it's time to go home. Thank you all for coming. And we look forward to getting back to the focus of TLI and not organizational junk. Take care. Have a good night.